thank you all for choosing this workshop. I hope it won't be too boring for you. Not too many people like research. So.
They were the highest, the number of people who registered for this workshop were the highest.
Nothing like putting pressure on you. Appreciate that. All right, so what I thought I would do, instead of doing a traditional presentation, I thought maybe I could just work y'all through live, me doing some research, and just let you see what my methodology is. A little bit about me. I'm not a trained anything really. I have an undergraduate degree in education, and I taught on a high school level for 5 years. But that's really the only official training I have. So you don't have to have a whole lot of training in order to do good research and learn things. You just have to have a determination to go out there and find something. And then you need to know a little bit about which tools to use. So a little bit about me, I love to research, I love to read. I started reading at an early age, and my mom is an English teacher, so she started me reading very young, and all my siblings as well. And I did my first research project in like the 3rd or 4th grade, grade 3, grade 4, somewhere there. I was just assigned research for a school, teaching you how to do a research paper. And I was a really weird kid. I enjoyed it. And I asked my teacher if I could do another one. And so she let me do another one. And I've been hooked ever since. I just enjoy going out and learning things that other people haven't learned. I wrote my first book in 2010. A friend just came and asked me some questions about the founding fathers of America and some things that he had heard, and he said, "Can you just answer these questions?" And so I said, "Sure, I'd love to do the research and learn it." So I started doing the research, and I wrote him a bunch of letters as I was studying things. And I had so much written that I sent to him in letters about this would be a book, and so I turned it into a book. And so since then, I've written several books, and they've all been just research projects that I've done. And as I'm doing the research, I just write out what I'm learning, and it turns into a book. And with today's technology, anyone can write and publish a book. You just write it yourself, put it up on Amazon KDP, and you can start distributing your book to all around the world. I've written. I don't know what your computer just did, sweetheart. There we go. All right. So I've written 11 books. I've made contributions to 4 different areas of research. Those are history, law, medicine, and theology. And so I don't have a whole bunch of credentials, but because I've been able to do some of this research and it's of good enough quality that people that do have credentials actually refer back to my research and their own research. And so that validates it. And of course, not having the credentials, I was always nervous, thinking, maybe what I'm doing is wrong, and maybe I'm getting it all incorrect, and I don't know what I'm talking about. And then I see other people start referring back to it, people that are trained in the field, that have years of training, and then are referring back to my stuff and saying that it's good, and it's very encouraging. But I don't have training specifically for research. And so no one has to have training for research in order to do it. You just have to have that determination, and you need to know a little bit about the tools and techniques. So if I can do it, any of y'all can do the same thing. All right, so how I do my research. The very first thing that you need to do when you're researching something is you need to grow your vocabulary. So whatever it is that you're going to learn about, you need to not just learn that one word, but all the other words around it. So for example, with ectopic pregnancy, my screensaver's coming on way too soon. All right, so with ectopic pregnancy, if you were to search, let me pull up a Google search page. If you were to search just for ectopic pregnancy on Google, why are you doing that? All right, you get some results. And these are just basic results from Google for an ectopic pregnancy. But what you would want to do is you want to find some good sources, some reputable sources that talk about what you're talking about, what you're studying. And let's say here's the Mayo Clinic, so we want to look at theirs. When we start scrolling through, what we're looking for at first is not really to understand things. We're looking for words that we don't understand. And so I would just scroll through and look for things that I don't understand. Let's see, I was looking for something particular here. Okay, so here we search for ectopic pregnancy, and we just go to this website and we start scrolling through, and now we have another term called tubal pregnancy. You can see that right here. And so that's a different word associated with ectopic pregnancy. So that's something I would write down. And I would write that down, and then I would look it up. It gives me a little bit of an explanation right here that a tubal pregnancy happens when a fertilized egg gets stuck on its way to the uterus because the fallopian tube is damaged. Okay, so I'll write the word, write the definition down, and then I'll look for more words that I don't understand. Let's see. And you just go through website after website after website, looking for words that you don't understand, write them down, and find out what they understand, and create a document that has all these words that you have now found definitions for. And that will be your foundation for learning more in a more scholarly study. Because in the scholarly literature, the public literature, they'll explain little things like what a tubal pregnancy is. You get into the scholarly literature, they don't explain it. They just expect you to already know it because they're writing for people that are already trained in that field. So if you're not trained in that field, you're going to have to teach yourself this vocabulary. So this is the first thing I do is I start with vocabulary. And one of the things I did with studying ectopic pregnancy is I knew there was more than one kind, so I just typed in types of ectopic pregnancy. And then right off the bat, you can see there's a list right there. You have interstitial pregnancy, cesarean scar pregnancy, cervical pregnancy, corneal or rudimentary horn pregnancy, ovarian pregnancy, intramural pregnancy, and abdominal pregnancy. Those are all different types of ectopic pregnancy. And so those are words that I would look up. So when I was doing this research, I looked up each of these phrases in order to find out what each one of them means. And the goal is to create boundaries for your research. Because you need to know what you're looking for before you look for it. And so you're just trying to figure out, you don't want a huge, big, long research trail that goes to nowhere. You want to know what you're looking for. And so you want to set little fences around what area you want to look at. You also need to know what not to waste time on. And so as you're doing your vocabulary, you might come across a term that you don't understand, and you look up that word, and you realize, oh, this doesn't really have anything to do with ectopic pregnancy, or this doesn't really have anything to do with whatever topic I'm studying on. And so that word you'll leave out from your document of words, so you won't do more study on that. And so you're eliminating things to look at and finding more things to look at. And you create this vocabulary list that you can add to and consult throughout your research. All right, once you have your vocabulary list, you need to get as good a definition as you can. A lot of the research is going to be in English for the scholarly literature. And so for English definitions, there's a website that I use. It is Etymonline.com. And we'll pull it up here real quick and you can see what that looks like. All right, so it's an online etymology dictionary. Etymology is the study of the history of words. And so if you look up a word in a standard dictionary, it will just give you in most cases, it will give you the current definition of a word. But if you're studying something, remember the first ectopic pregnancies that I've studied were back in the 18th century. The words that they used back then didn't always mean the same thing then that they mean now. And so you have to look up the history of some of those terms in order to find out what they mean. And so if you were to look up here, if you were to look up ectopic, and it tells you that it's an adjective, comes from 1864, is when the word first occurred in the English language. And you can see it comes from the word ectopia, which means morbid displacement of parts. Came from Greek ektopos, which means away from a place, distant, etc. And then you have the breakdown that I gave at the beginning of my talk. You have ek as the first Greek word, which means out, and then topos is the next Greek word, which highlighted means place. And so you can see all that just from this one dictionary at the Etymonline.com. So it's a very useful place to go in order to define your terms and learn more about what you're studying. All right, and then let's see, we already talked about the Google search.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can you do country specific, meaning that if you're searching for a word, in that country, send it the, what is the origin?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
No, meaning that if we type in any word, can we make it in that country,
Conventionalize it.
popularly used, or when did it have its origin?
For a particular country?
Yeah, can it
Yeah.
be country specific?
Yeah, this one is not country specific. I don't know of any that are country specific. But I haven't really looked for any of that. There might be some out there. I haven't looked for them.
No, I think what she means is when you Google it out, our Google in India
Mhm.
is limited. So it will give you only information that is, today's nation and stuff like that. It's-
Right, so to get more results from Google than what they limit you to in some areas, you have to have what's called a VPN, a virtual private network.
Oh,
There's software that you can get for that. I have one that I use, and it's called Private Internet Access. You have to pay for it. It's $7 a month for this one. But I can actually, I have a sister who was in China for a little while, and in China they have strict controls on everything that's over the internet.
oh.
And so she was doing some research and some study on the Bible, and she couldn't get it in China. And so I gave her access to my VPN, and so you can select here what country you want it to look like you're from. And so I can actually select any of these countries. So if I'm still in India right here, I can select Florida and turn this on. And then everything I look for, it will look like I'm in Florida on the internet. And in this case, I have to choose the verify I'm not a robot and all that kind of stuff.
Hijacking the internet.
Yeah,
Like I hijacked David from one finger to here.
yep. So it's there's all kinds of tools like that out there. I'm in a lot of, read a lot about the hacking community. It does a lot of hacking and getting into computers. And I don't use it illegally, but they use it illegally. I take what they learn and try to use it for good. So a VPN is very helpful if Google is blocking your results. And some of them work well, some of them don't. You just have to play with it, see which one works well. Okay, so after you've got your vocabulary, okay, so after you got your vocabulary, you create a spreadsheet to catalog your study results. I use Microsoft Excel. You can also use Google. Google has a Google Forms, or not Forms, what is their? Sheets, yes, thank you.
Google spreadsheet.
Yeah, the Google spreadsheet, you can use that instead. And so whatever you're studying, you want to create a spreadsheet for that. So this is the new research that I'm doing on ectopic pregnancy, and I'm eventually gonna get all my, the thousands that I find, I'm gonna have them all listed out like this and publish it in a book. And so in scholarly research, you need to have certain things in order for people to trust your sources and believe that what you say is correct. For every source, you need to have the date, you need to have the title of the article, you need to list the author who wrote that article. You have to say where that article was published. So if it's published in a journal, you need to put the name of the journal. If it's published in a book, you need to put the name of the book. Or if it's published on the website, you have to put the internet address for the website. And then the data that you're getting from those articles, the data you're collecting, you want to have a separate column for each type of data. So here I have, the main thing I'm looking for in these studies is fetal survival. I want to see the babies that are born from ectopic pregnancy. So I have a column here for fetal survival that was reported in each of these articles. And then I also want to know how many mothers survived. And so I have a column here for maternal survival to tell me how many mothers survived as well. And then I thought, it'd be good to have the gestational age at birth. So how far along in the pregnancy were these babies when they were born? And so you can see here, I've got that column of 38, 39, 37, 40. And then one of the columns I added was expectant management, because that's the treatment that I recommend the most. So I wanted to see if that article mentioned whether or not there was expectant management. And most of them don't even mention it. None of the ones I have, here we go, here's some with a yes. So I just put a yes for all the articles that mention it. And then I have a section for notes. And so if you see anything interesting that I found while I was reading the article, that gets put in the notes section.
Bill, can I
Yes.
ask a question? We'll be able to do this only when all the studies that we are looking at are of a similar study design, right?
No, you can grab the data from any study that mentions it. So many of these studies are not similar to each other. A lot of these are case reports of individual cases. Some of them are meta studies where other people have studied a whole bunch of cases and put it together. Some of them don't even have anything to do with, the focus wasn't really on ectopic pregnancy. There's some studies that I've found, the focus was on sonography, which is...
Please, can you enlarge it? Because there's a zoom on.
Right at the bottom.
Okay, all right, that's it.
Yeah.
Where do I do that?
Here it is, right at the
Bottom
bottom.
right.
Oh, that's it, yep.
It will move, fine.
There we go.
Please, thank you.
It looks fine on my screen. All right. But yeah, a lot of the studies that I've looked through, they weren't written about ectopic pregnancy. They were written about sonography and how to use an ultrasound properly in order to detect an ectopic pregnancy. And so as they're talking about how to use the ultrasound properly and ectopic pregnancy, they also mention, and in this particular case, the baby was born alive. And it's not even the subject of the article, but it happens to show up in the search results. And so I'll use that also. So it doesn't have to be studies that are just about the topic that you're studying. Just anything that mentions the terms that you're searching for, that you can go through.
So having your key terms in place are important.
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
The keywords need to be decided beforehand.
Yes, that's your vocabulary list. That's going to be your keywords that you're going to search for. All those vocabulary terms that you create. And I'm sorry, I don't have a digital example of the vocabulary. I usually was just writing that by hand instead of on a computer. Yes? And y'all feel free to keep interrupting. I don't mind.
What about the limitations that you find in the study? Do you think we should mention that here as well?
Yes. If the study mentions that our results are limited to certain situations, I would mention that in the notes.
In the notes.
Yeah. All right, now let's take a look at some of the tools for research. So once you have your terms and you're ready with your spreadsheet to start putting data in the spreadsheet, then you can start doing your search. And I start with Google Scholar. And it is scholar.google.com. And so Google Scholar only.
Say that again.
Yep, scholar.google.com. Scholar.google.com. Could someone possibly grab me a glass of water to
Yes.
put back here? Thank you very much. All right, so Google Scholar is where I start. It's not the best place to find articles, but it is the best place to search for the articles. And so I start with Google Scholar. Now, Google Scholar is going to search just for the scholarly literature. So it's going to ignore the regular popular websites. It's going to ignore most books. And it's just going to focus on the scholarly literature that is reputable. Thank you very much. Okay, so if we were to go to Google Scholar, and here we type in ectopic pregnancy, and one of the things I recommend doing when you're searching, if you have a term that is 2 words, put it in quotation marks. If you don't have the quotation marks, and we search for ectopic pregnancy, well, let me get rid of the quotation marks there. Let me get rid of those. All right. Okay, so you can see it does come up with some having to do with ectopic pregnancy right off the bat, but as you scroll through, eventually you're going to come up with stuff that just mentions pregnancy and doesn't even mention ectopic, because you have 2 different words and it's searching for both words, but not necessarily searching for them together. And you can see, I do know how to zoom in on this. Here we go. All right, and you can see it's got how many results? It's over 4 million results that it came. That's a lot to search through. And so we don't want to search for that many results. So we take it and we put the quotation marks around, so we only want to look for that whole phrase, those 2 words together in that order. And that will limit the results. Now we're at 1.42 million. Okay, so it's a little, much more manageable, somewhat. It's a little bit more manageable than the whole 4 million. But if we can narrow it even further by searching for some of those terms. If we search for abdominal pregnancy instead of the broad category of ectopic, and now we have 8,460 results. And so it limits how many results you get back when you can put it in quotations and you use something more than just a generic term. Use a very specific term in that search. One of the reasons that you don't want to use just regular Google search or like ChatGPT or Wikipedia or something like that is that there's no one overseeing those results to weed out the worthless information and what's wrong. ChatGPT gets stuff wrong all the time. I have used ChatGPT with my marketing business, and I'll say, hey, give me an answer for this question. And it'll give me the answer, and I know it's 100% false. And it just grabs random information off the internet and throws it in there. Google also, if you search for things on Google, you can't guarantee that's going to be good. You have no idea who wrote that article. You have no idea if they're reputable or if anyone checked their research to make sure it's good. And so it's not good to just do a Google search. Wikipedia, I had someone once quote a Wikipedia article to me in a debate that I was having with him. And it was a written debate, so it was online. I had some time in between each response. And so he gave me his on Christian pacifism, whether the Bible commands us to be 100% pacifist and never take up any type of physical altercation. And so he was saying, well, Wikipedia says that Christians were pacifists all the way back to the time of Jesus' day. And so I just went into Wikipedia and I changed the article. And I wrote back to him, no, it doesn't. So he went and looked, and it didn't say that anymore. And that's how reputable Wikipedia is. Anyone can go in and just change it and have it say whatever they want. Now, there are people that try to monitor those changes and try to keep it in line, but as long as you have a source that you're citing, you can put whatever you want in Wikipedia. And so it's not a good place to find reputable information that you can use to change culture. So you wanted to do something like Google Scholar. It's going to give you the scholarly results. Okay, so now I did abdominal pregnancy. We're going to add one more thing to this. We're going to add the term advanced. Because if you search for an abdominal pregnancy, you start looking at these, a lot of them are going to talk about very early in the gestation period. And you're going to realize pretty quickly, well, I did anyway, as I was going through, you realize pretty quickly, there's a whole lot of articles in here that aren't even talking about what I'm talking about, because they're talking about how to kill the child early in an abdominal pregnancy. Well, that doesn't fit what I'm looking for. But I found out that the ones that were talking about the babies being born alive, they always said that abdominal pregnancy was advanced. So I said, okay, let me add advanced as a search term. And when I add advanced abdominal pregnancy, now my results are even smaller, 4,590, which is a lot more manageable than 2 million or 4 million that we got when we first searched for ectopic pregnancy. And so now that I have this narrow result, I can start going through and looking for articles that I think are going to be a good fit for my research and start studying them. So here we have one, it's advanced abdominal pregnancy. Let's just tap on that one. Okay, and this one comes up, and all it shows is the first page of the article. So we can't get very much information here. It's very small print, can't zoom in, and then there's an option to buy it. And that's where a lot of people stop when they try to do scholarly research. They realize, oh, this costs money, I don't have the money, so I can't do it. Maybe some of y'all are rich and you can just pay for all of them. I'm not. So I couldn't do all this type of research. All right, but if I wanted to find this particular article, I can find it somewhere for free using another tool that is libgen, Libgen, and .is.
Say it again.
libgen.is. And it's not loading.
It's gen.lib.rusec. Initially, the latest site check that was the present was. Yeah, for me, always in India, that's the one that works.
Which one is it?
gen.lib.rusec. I mean, the last I checked, that was the one that worked.
Yeah,
Should be that one.
gen.lib.rus.
.rus.
Yeah, that's the Russian mirror of it. Yeah.
Gen.lib.
.rus.
And that one doesn't want to copy
/ec. It should have
Oh,
a
/ec. Okay.
Or I can check.
Could you enlarge it?
Or we could just Google search.
Library Genesis and
Yeah, you can.
it'll tell you whichever was the latest mirror of it.
Right, you can search for
Just Google search.
library Genesis, and I would type in mirror, MIROR for mirror.
Because I think recently some government banned a few mirrors.
Yeah, the scholarly community does not like libgen at all.
Yeah.
Because they're taking stuff that should be, a lot of people say should be paid for in order to access it, and they're just making it available for free. I think I lost the internet access. It did say it's back. Yeah.
It is back, it is back.
Yeah, let's see what happens. All right, well anyway, this is what it looks like. So you can go to Library Genesis and you can search for articles on Library Genesis instead of searching for it on Google. And you can highlight the name of the article and possibly include a name, if it's a generic name of the article, like advanced abdominal pregnancy, that's the name of that article. That's going to return a whole bunch of things. So if you want to look for a specific article, you search for both the name of the article in quotations and then you search for one of the authors. So in this case, the author Costa is the author's name. This is still not logging out. Yeah, now it says it lost the internet connection. Yeah. And came back. All right. Good. Rachel's device. Okay. Let's try that. All right. Now let's try this first. There we go. All right, so we got Library Genesis up. All right, so we're gonna look and see if we can find that particular article that was not available on Google. So advanced abdominal pregnancy. And Costa, I think, was one of the authors. All right, and so there's a couple options down here. Let me enlarge this for you. Underneath the search bar, there's a couple of options. You can choose nonfiction / sci-tech, you can choose fiction, you can choose scientific articles, and you can choose magazines. So we're doing research for professional stuff, so we want to do the scientific articles instead of any of the others. And so then we search for that particular article and just see if it comes up. Okay, and here we have Costa SD and Presley. Let's see if it's the same words. You got Presley, Buster. Yep, all right, so that is that article. And so then we can type in over here where it says mirrors. We can click on one of these. And it will bring up a Get page. And now it is downloading that exact article. And so this is an article that normally you'd have to pay for, but LibGen puts it up for free. And they're working in kind of a gray area of copyright law because they're not selling it, they're giving it away for free, and so it's not technically illegal, but the scholarly community doesn't like it because it gives non-scholars access to their information, so they're trying to constantly fight against LibGen and get it turned off. So occasionally, the LibGen site might be shut down. You might have to use one of their mirrors, or another site that goes to the same place, or you might just have to search on Google for LibGen, or just try the next day. Usually, if they go down, they're pretty quick at getting it back up and running. They're currently involved in a couple lawsuits here in India because of the community here trying to get LibGen shut down. What were you going to say?
I've realized that whenever I don't find something on Library Genesis, especially with like research papers, at least in India, Sci Hub always has it.
Yeah, Sci Hub is another really good resource.
Because I feel like LibGen generally always has books, but some of the papers Sci Hub always has papers.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't used them much. I've just recently found out about them. And so yeah, Sci, S-C-I, like science.
Oh,
Science fiction.
So Sci and then Hub, H-U-B. All right, so now we have this article, and I don't even know if this says anything about the rate of live births or anything, but we can just start scanning through. Let's see. An interesting fact it says here, interesting is that only 20 to 40% of women with an abdominal pregnancy who reached the hospital alive had an accurate preoperative diagnosis of abdominal pregnancy, which basically just tells us the doctors didn't know that it was an abdominal pregnancy until she got there. And was bleeding. And so there needs to be more training in this area. But we could just scroll through this article, and this looks like it's just an overview article. It may not have anything about what we're looking for at this time, but if not, you just go back and go to the next article. And it takes time. You just have to keep going through articles. I mentioned in the other session, I've got about 2 million articles that I've collected data on that I haven't read. And so I'm working my way through about 2 million articles that I think have something to do with advanced or with live birth from ectopic pregnancy. You just slowly go through these articles, read it. There's a lot of reading involved, and look for anything that fits in your data points on your spreadsheet. And you find something that fits, you put it in there, and fill out all the information in the spreadsheet. I saw a hand raised somewhere. Nope. Okay. All right. One thing this one did not have that you'll often see is an abstract. Instead of having to read the whole article, you can sometimes read just the abstract. This second one here, advanced abdominal pregnancy observations in 10 cases. We'll go to that one and see if it has an abstract. It's just kind of a summary of what the article is about. And a lot of times you can read the abstract, there it is on this one, and that will give you the information to let you know whether or not this is an article worth reading. So this one, you have advanced abdominal pregnancy. Increase that size. Counter 10 times in 102,000 deliveries, period of 10 years. Frequent symptoms, multiple diagnostic procedures. Maternal mortality was 20%. Perinatal mortality, 40% in this series. Okay, so perinatal, that has to do with the child. So peri has to do with around and natal birth. So mortality, that's death. So death for the child around the time of birth is only 40% in their study. Now their study was of 10 instances, so that means there were 4 where the baby died, which means there's 6 where the baby lived. And so if we're studying live births from ectopic pregnancy, this would be a good article to read to see if they give any details about those live births. But as you can see, we just have the abstract here. We don't have the whole thing. We can buy it, subscribe. So let's look for this one on Library Genesis. So we'll copy the heading here. And we'll just paste this into Library Genesis. Okay, and no articles were found. Let's see if we can try Sci Hub. Do you remember the web address for Sci Hub?
sci.hub. I don't know if the Taiwan one is working, so .tw or .ru, like the Russian one.
.ru?
That is not sci-hub.ru.
Oh, dash instead of dot? Okay.
SCI-hub.
SCI dash. Okay. Alright, so we got that one pulled up, and I'm learning at the same time y'all are for this, because I've only heard about Sci Hub, I've never actually used them. Okay, so they said they don't have that requested one either. When I find one that I can't access, a lot of times what I'll do is I will contact one of my friends who is a student at a university. And many of the university libraries have already paid the subscriptions for the access to the scholarly articles. And so I'll go to my friend and I'll say, here is the article that I want, can you find it for me? And I have one in here. Let's see. There we go. This one right here was not online anywhere. And I had to take it to a friend and ask my friend to search for it. And he found it for me. This is the one that has the record going all the way back to the 1800s of live births of ectopic pregnancies. And so this was an article written, it's full-term intra-abdominal pregnancy. It was not available anywhere on the web. I had a friend who was a student at University of Alabama in Birmingham, and I just asked him, can you go get this for me? So he just went and said, sure. So he went into their library, downloaded it, put it on a thumb drive, brought it back to me. And this was really one of the pivotal articles in my study, because this guy went through and documented every single one of them. So here you have 1809 is the earliest one that he found. Okay. that top one there, so, sorry, that's hard, really hard to read. It's hard for me to read on my screen too, it's just a scan. But 1809, status of the fetus, 9-month-old, so that's full-term delivery, mother recovered. This was in Paris, and it was published, and it didn't get published in a magazine until 1894. So there was a medical records, and someone found the medical records in 1894, they published it. So this has a phenomenal table. This one has 316 cases that this guy has gone through and already put into a table form, and he documents, you know, where it was reported, what happened, where the hospital was, everything. Is a lot of good information there. Now, in his report, he wasn't doing just those that had live births. There were some that were born stillborn, and he included those in this as well. There were some that were born, and it was a live birth, but it was only at like 16 weeks and things like that, so there was no hope of the child surviving. But he just did an extensive study. But that's one that I did not have on the internet anywhere. I had to find someone that had university access and get him to go get it for me. Let's see, I want to go back to Google. I want to show you. All right, the third one in our search for advanced abdominal pregnancy. You can see over here it has PDF and informant.org. When they have something in the Google search that's off to the right, this right-hand column, that is the complete free text of that article. If you find one of those, they're not free forever. They're just free for a limited time. And so, even the ones on Library Genesis, they're not guaranteed to always be there. And so I always recommend that when you find the article that has anything to do with what you're studying, download the whole article and put it on your computer so that you have access to it and you can share it with other people. Okay, so this one has the free article online of advanced abdominal pregnancy, a single case report, and a review of 163 other cases. Let's see if I can zoom in here. All right, so we have the abstract right off the bat. So it tells us in the issue has a single case report of advanced abdominal pregnancy, AAP, received in our hospital. It's presented and followed by a review of another 163 cases. Doesn't tell us if it says anything about live birth or not. And so we just have to keep reading. Here we have right off the bat, a pregnancy of over 20 weeks, advanced abdominal pregnancies over 20 weeks with a fetus living. And they're going to probably give their case report first. Okay, so their case report, she has, let's see if it tells us if the baby lived or not. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so here we have the fetus was removed without difficulty. Doesn't really tell us if the fetus was alive or not. Looks like the child was probably had already died by the time they did the operation. What it looks like here. But then they have this table, and this table here has all kinds of references to other places that have talked about it. And so here, this first row here tells us it's reference number 5 with the symbol above it and the footnotes. We'll look at that in a second. But in 1946, there was a study in the U.S. Had 41,634 total deliveries. Of that, total advanced abdominal pregnancy was 13. And then diagnosed before operation, abnormal eye, mothers transfused, that means the mothers received a blood transfusion. Post-operative complications, it doesn't mention any, but we have fetal or perinatal deaths. There's 11 fetal deaths, but there were 13 total of these cases. That means you had 2 that survived. And so even though they're not talking about how many survived anywhere in this article, we can see right away from that data, there is an article somewhere that talks about these 13 that survived. Now we saw it's going to be in the footnotes under 5. So we'll scroll down to the footnotes at the bottom of the article and see if we can figure out. Okay, so now it tells us which article they were referencing in that table. That's the Abdominal Pregnancy, a Review. It tells us the journal that was published in, and it tells us the author's names. That's all enough information for us to go and look for that particular article, which is the whole point of them putting it in the footnote, in case someone wants to double check what they found. So we can now go and look for that article. And I'll put the name of the article, and I'm going to include the name of one of the authors, which is Beecham. And then we can click on search. Nothing found there. Let's see what we can find on Google. That article sounds familiar. I think I've found it before somewhere. Okay. This is close to it, but it's not the same thing. Let's see if we had here Beecham WD, 1946. 1946. Okay, so this is the same article, just under a different name. So I'm going to go back to the Library Genesis search, and I'm going to eliminate the A review part. Let's see if we can find the article this way. And there it is. Okay, so there's that article, and it is in red, so I have found it before and looked at it, but let's go ahead and pull that up. And wait on it to download. We won't continue to use your data. We'll save your data on that. All right. So that one we could download, and then we could read that article, and we can find the information about those cases. That article probably references other cases. Since they did have a couple of cases with live births, they're probably going to reference in the footnotes some other articles that mention live births. And we can go and look up those articles. And remember, we still have this one back here that had that table. And so there's still more that we can look up. As we go to the next entry into the table, see if that article has anything to do with live births, if there's any that are mentioned. Let's see, it has total cases 13 and perinatal death at 8. So the next article in his list has 5 surviving babies that were born alive. This rug is going to kill me one of these days. All right. And so then we can look up that article and do that information and follow it, look up the footnotes for that article. We just follow that trail until we can't find any more. And then go back to here and go to the next one and look up and just do it over and over and over again, continue to do that. And as you find each article, you go back to your spreadsheet and you fill in the information from that article so you have a record. When I first did my study that is included in the book, I did not use a spreadsheet like this, and I really wish I had. I did download all the articles. So I had all the articles downloaded on my computer so I could go back and repeat the study, but I couldn't prove to other people right away, hey look, here's my study, here's my records of all 500 cases I found. I can just tell them, hey, I found 500 cases, and they could believe me or not. But now I'm going back through this new study, I'm documenting every single article and exactly how many surviving babies they had. So that it does 2 things. To document all that, it allows you to prove that what you're saying is true. And that's important. That's not as important as the other advantage. The other advantage is other people can continue your research. Because right now, if I tell people, hey, I found 500 cases, they have no idea where to start just to verify my research and then to continue it. I can't make it all the way through those 2 million articles I want to go through. That's impossible. I'm not going to be able to do it on my own. But I can start and I can keep a record. And the next person that comes along sees where I went and how far I went, and then they pick up the trail there and they can continue. And then someone after them can pick up the trail where they leave off and they can continue. And it can just build and build and build if we keep records. Records are extremely important, and I wish I had known that when I first did my research, because now I'm having to go back and redo what I did 10 years ago or 12 years ago. I have to redo it now because I didn't keep good records. So this spreadsheet that you started out with is very important as you do your research on any topic. Another thing that you want to look for is articles that are not in English or in any of the Indian languages. So articles in languages that you don't read. There is a whole lot in medical literature that is written in German. And I don't read or speak German. But we have the tools nowadays that you can use, like Google Translate, and it will translate if the text is there and it's not just a picture of the article, but if you can copy and paste the text, then Google Translate can go in and do a passable job of translating it. Once you get their basic translation, and it looks like it's going to be an article that has information that you need to find someone that speaks that language natively. And you can ask them to verify the translation that Google gave. The person you have verifying the translation, they don't even have to have any training in medicine or any knowledge of what you're doing. They just need to be able to say, yes, Google did a good job of translating this article. One thing that has really helped me tremendously with that is we know a lot of missionaries. And so I have several friends who are missionaries in Germany, and I can just send an article to one of them and say, hey, is this a good translation of this article? And I have to wait for a response because, as a missionary, they're very busy. But eventually they can reply and tell me whether or not it's a good translation. And then I can use that and add it to my study. But don't get stopped by translation issues. If there's something that comes up that you don't understand, it's in a different language, that's not a barrier anymore. It used to be a major barrier, but nowadays it's not. Just use a tool online to translate it and keep going. Yes.
Google Translation, I guess it is helpful in some foreign languages and all, but some of the articles or any text in the Indian language has a different framing of words in the sentences. So while translating from an Indian native language to English or vice versa, the words are framed very abruptly or not having any sense.
Yes.
So that is observed very commonly.
Yes, that's something that's why I recommend finding someone that speaks that language natively in order to ask them about it. Because Google Translate is a whole lot better than what we used to have, which is you had to find someone else to do the translation for you. It's a whole lot better than that. And so since we're not necessarily reading these articles in order to understand every single word, we just want to know, in my case, in my research, I just want to know, was there a baby born alive? And I can usually get that information from Google Translate and then get that information verified from someone else. So if you were searching something a little more intricate, like procedures for doing something, you would definitely want to find someone that speaks that language natively to verify the steps of the procedure are correct before you start sharing it with other people. So yes, that is a very good thing to keep in mind. Google, by the way, I've noticed they will, in their results, they will often have the English translation of the article as the result, instead of giving you the article in the original language. when you then search for that article in Library Genesis, it will often give you the original language article. And so you can trust the Google translation, or you can find the original translation that you can send to someone else for verification. All right. Some other popular or some other good sources of scholarly information would include archive.org. And it's archive.org, so archive.org. And Archive has a lot of the same information that's on Google, but you can see across the top they have web, text, video, audio, software, and images. And so you can go to their text collection, and they have thousands and thousands and thousands of books and journals that they've put in a database, just like Google has put in a database. Many times I've found things that were on Google at one time, and then Google purged their database and got rid of them. A lot of times they can still be found on archive.org.
Even books that are like gone out of publishing and
Right.
you can't find a copy anywhere.
Right. Yeah. What I use this one for is the Wayback Machine right here on the home page. And you can type in any web address in this Wayback Machine, and it will show you all the previous versions of that website. And so remember I mentioned in the main session that the Mayo Clinic had changed what they said about ectopic pregnancy and live birth minute. You can actually find their ectopic pregnancy article, and as long as it's the same website, the same web address, you can type it into here, and it will tell you all the different versions of that website. So let's see, let's go to, I'm just going to go to my own website. So if I go to my website, increasinglearning.com, and I search for it on the Wayback Machine, okay, and so it shows me every single year that my website has been active. And it shows me grabs that they did, little snapshots they did of my website in the past. So if I go to, say, the year 2015, and each of those little colored dots over the top of a day, each of those is a day that archive.org took a snapshot of my website. And so I can hover over one of those and click on a time, and it will bring up what my website looked like, exactly what it looked like at that day and that time. And wow, this is a very old version of my website. And so that's what the website looked like on that exact day and time. And I can go through the website just like I was on it normally. I just click on each link and it'll go to what that link looked like at that day and time. So it helps with looking at things that used to be available and are no longer available. So if you find some information, let's say you're reading an article and they say that they found this source on this website on such and such a day, and you go and look at that website and it's no longer available. So if you got the ebook version of my book, there are several links in there that are no longer accessible. See if I can pull it up real quick. Okay. All right, so here's one of the websites. I don't know if that's going to come up, but you can see I accessed this website. Let me make that bigger. Okay, so I accessed this website on May of 2012, and if we follow the link and it says, we're sorry, we couldn't find the page. So it's a broken link, it's not there anymore. So now I can take this link and I can go over to the Internet Archive page. Did I delete that, or exit that page?
You're in it.
Oh, I'm on it, okay. All right, so I go to the Internet Archive, let's go back to their homepage. All right, and I can copy and paste that exact same web address, and now I can see they deleted that page at the end of 2023. I looked at it in May of 2012, so I'll go back to 2012, and I go to May, and I pick a snapshot from May of 2012, and this will pull up exactly what that website looked like at the time that I did my research and wrote that article. Eventually. All right, and so now we have that article that I was referencing in my book. Now we can see exactly what it looked like when I referenced it. And so it talks about the ectopic pregnancy cannot support the life of the fetus for very long. And I was quoting this to say that they say that ectopic pregnancy has no possibility of the child surviving and the mother has to have an abortion, which is what they said at that time. And we could go forward to one of the other times. And I don't know if this is one of the ones that changed or not, but we'll just see if we can find a later edition of that webpage and see what it says. Let me zoom in here. Okay, so here it still says cannot support. Yep, all right. So I was hoping I could find a place where it changed it to say that it can, in rare cases, come and support life, but it doesn't say it on this one. All right, but anyway, you can use the Wayback Machine on archive.org in order to find websites that are no longer accessible and make it so that you can read and see what's going on. What time is it?
3:46.
3:46. Okay, so we're getting towards the end. Very quickly, another good resource for books. If you want to find something in books and you're not sure if a book talks about a particular topic, you can go to Amazon Books and you can search inside of the book before you even buy it for a lot of the books on Amazon. Let's see if I can show you how to do that. And it will only give you a tiny little snippet. It won't give you very much, but it will give you a tiny little snippet that you can use. Let's see, I'm going to just choose one of my books. All right, why did it not give me mine? Come on now. My book should have the top spot on Amazon. I can't believe it has mine not at the top spot. All right, I'll add my name. There it is, okay. All right, so if we go to the page for that book, and so let's say we're doing some research and this book is mentioned in the research. And let's go to I think I have to be in the Kindle version. Well, there used to be a search right there, and now it's just read inside. I may have gotten rid of that. It used to have a search inside right here instead of read sample, or right along with the read sample. So they may have gotten rid of that. Okay, so we'll throw that one out. But you can also look for it on Google Books and do the same thing. All right, and it says no preview, So it says that there's nothing you can find in there. But if we open up the book page, there might be possibility of searching inside of it without the preview, and it does not allow that. Let's find one that has a preview. And none of these have previews. All right, so this one has snippet view. All right, so I have no idea what this book is about. Fourth grade families in southern Mississippi. So it's got snippet
Would your
view.
book be on LibGen?
I don't. I never looked. All right, so this one has a snippet view, and so from the inside of the book, we can, as long as it has at least a snippet view on the book on Google, either snippet view or a preview, you can search inside of that book. And so let's just search for the word Franklin, and it will show you everywhere that word appears inside of the book. And it will just be a very small section of the sentence. But if I wanted to get the whole sentence, I would just grab each word in the sentence and search for each one of those words. And it will eventually give me enough of the next line that I can grab a word from the next line, I can throw it into the search results. And I can search for that word. And they'll give me the word at the end of that line, I can throw it in, and maybe it'll show me a little bit on the next line. And I've had times where I've read an entire paragraph of a book by doing this snippet view, just searching one little word at a time. And it gives me one line at a time, or one or two lines at a time, and I'm able to read the entire paragraph that way. For a book that was out of print, and there was no way I could get it, but I was able to get the information using this method. So there's a lot of little things like that you can do. Another resource is Hathy Trust, Hathitrust. It is, I think it starts with Babel as the first word. So babel.hathitrust.org. And it's similar to Google Books. It's a collection of books online that can be searched through. And so you can search for whatever keywords you want to search for. Let's search for Ectopic and just see what happens to come up. All right, they didn't find anything with Ectopic. I didn't expect them to because it's not a very popular topic. Since I already looked at Benjamin Franklin, let's just search for Franklin. They didn't have anything up there. Well. Anyway, there's a limited amount of things that you can search for on Hathy Trust and find actual books that, I'll give you an example of a book that I've found before. All right, the Anti-Jacobin Review in the magazine. Let's see if it comes up for me. This was something I pulled up for some of my historical research. And so you can see this really old book from many years ago. I'm going to stop scrolling so I don't run up your data costs. And it's available there, it's been scanned, and you can read it, and you can find information from that. On the abortion debate, there's probably not a whole lot that you'll find from Hathy Trust. But if you're doing some legal research, a lot of the legal documents are available from them, and you can find them there. All right, so there's a lot of tools. I've just barely scratched the surface. And just things that, if you're really serious about doing research, there are a lot of tools out there to help you get it done. You just have to kind of slog through a whole lot of reading material in order to find the information you're looking for. Anyone have any other questions or thoughts or criticisms? Nothing on what we're about 10 minutes?
I have one question.
Yes.
Many times you come across estimates and stats, but you really, for a researcher to deep into the research methodology used, whether it was a nice and good research design is difficult for someone who doesn't have a background in research. So any tools in that sense, where they can check how reliable is this publisher or even the author? things like that?
Well, as far as checking the reliability of the author, I don't have much for you. What I like to do is check the actual data itself. Let's see. Okay, so this is Dr. Clark's article about embryo transfer in vivo, and what I like to look for in an article to make sure that it's worthwhile is, before I even look at the text, I want to find out if he has a table. And the table gives me the raw data. It's not his interpretation of it. This is the actual numbers that he found. And so I want to start with looking at those numbers and see if I understand that table and see if he has more. So he has another table there. So I want to start with looking at those tables and get an idea of the numbers that he's working with and the raw data that he is working with. And then I go back and read what he said about it. And I come to my own conclusions, whether or not what he said matches the data. I have found many papers, one on transgender, that CG was talking about the transgender issue. There was a paper written a while back, about 10 years ago, and it talked about how transgenderism is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. That's what they were saying. And they had all this data about these brains that they had studied post-mortem. And they said this was a person who was transgender, this is a person who was not, and you can see the differences in this particular chemical level, and they had a nice little graph. Well, I wasn't sure if that author could be trusted, so I found other articles that they had written on the same topic. They had another article on the same topic where they had taken the exact same brains and they had studied them for a different chemical. And they said, okay, now this chemical shows that the transgenderism is caused by a chemical in the brain. I took the two graphs and I overlaid them against each other and compared the two graphs to each other, and there were brains on the first graph that they were saying this is proof that this chemical causes this person to be transgender. And on the second graph, that person had none of the chemical that they were saying this chemical over here causes the person to be transgender, and that happened many times. And so just comparing the raw data to the raw data, I was able to show, okay, these articles are in conflict. These authors can't be trusted because they're contradicting what they say when you go from article to article. And so you just have to look at the raw information. When you have people come up with estimates and statistics, you can massage the statistics to say whatever you want it to say. So you have to look at the actual numbers that they started with and compare those actual numbers to other places to find that out. It can be hard, it's a lot of work, but it can be done. Anyone else?
My question was, for example, with rotation set, right? That how do you know, like, that it's, you just have to go ahead and sort of cross-check the data and look through the proper data. But and then a lot of times, a lot of bias that you see the interview that the researcher has, either he's pro-LGBT, whatever topic. So when you're working on your research, when you're writing these articles, how do you ensure that, and generally if we put out a research paper and it has an author that sounds Catholic or is Catholic or is Christian or is pro-life, they'll say, well, it's biased because, for example, study on how abortion impacts women post psychology. So when you're doing writing an article, how do you ensure that the bias in that sense, or like both side you support, that bias doesn't show up in the paper? Because then anybody you show it to, they just throw it away and they say, well, he already has an opinion on it.
Right, yeah, so if I understand you're asking, how do I make sure that my bias is not influencing what I'm researching? Yes. What I try to do is I try to find people who disagree with me, and I use their data. So instead of using the data from people that already agree with me and come to the same conclusion, for example, this guy here, John Clark, that did this study, he was not advocating for saving babies in ectopic pregnancies. He was advocating for more abortion for ectopic pregnancies. And so his data, no one can point to that and say, oh, you're just using someone that agrees with you. He doesn't agree with me, or didn't, he's dead now, but he didn't agree with me. He was very much against our position. And so that's there's a term for that, and I forgot the name of the term. Anyway, that's what you do. You find people that disagree with you and use their data as much as possible instead of your own. All right, anyone else? All right, I think we're pretty much out of time, so thank you very much. I hope it wasn't too boring, and hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference.